Have you ever looked up at the night sky and just assumed that everything you see revolves around you, around us? Well, for thousands of years, that wasn't just an assumption, it was the reality. Then, one man pointed a new gadget towards the heavens and completely changed our place in the universe. This is the story of Galileo Galilei. And here he is. This man's story is just this incredible clash between what you can see with your own eyes and what you're told to believe. It's a battle between evidence and authority. He saw a completely new cosmos, but the powers that be, well, they just refused to open their eyes.
Okay, so to really feel the earthquake that Galileo caused, we first have to step back into the world he was born into. It was a world with a totally different view of the heavens. I mean, think about this. For almost 1,500 years, the accepted truth, based on the ancient teachings of Aristotle and Ptolemy, was that the heavens were perfect, they were divine, and they were unchanging. And everything, the sun, the planets, all the stars, they all circled around our planet, right in the center of it all.
So this really lays it out. You have the two competing systems. On one side, you've got the established geocentric view. Earth is the center of everything. On the other, you've got this radical, kind of wild idea from Copernicus, the heliocentric model, which puts the sun in the middle. It was a fascinating theory, for sure, but it was missing one absolutely crucial thing: hard proof.
Well, that missing proof was just around the corner, and it was all thanks to a powerful new tool and a little book that was about to stun the entire world.
So in 1609, Galileo hears about this new Dutch invention they're calling a spyglass. But he doesn't just copy it, no way. He gets to work, makes it vastly better, grinding his own lenses to create a telescope way more powerful than anything that existed before. And then he does something that no one had really thought to do. He points it at the sky.
His first major target? The moon. And what he saw? It was absolutely shocking. This wasn't some perfect, smooth crystal sphere like Aristotle had said. It was a world. It was covered in craters and scarred by huge mountains. I mean, it looked a lot like our Earth.
After that, the discoveries just started pouring in. He spots 4 moons circling Jupiter, which was a huge deal because it proved that not everything orbited the Earth. Then he sees spots on the sun, which totally shattered the idea of heavenly perfection. Every single observation was another crack in the foundation of that old universe.
But maybe the real smoking gun was Venus. Galileo watched it and saw that it went through a full set of phases, just like our moon does. And this was just flat out impossible in the old Earth-centered system. It could only happen if Venus was orbiting the sun, period.
Now, you'd think this growing mountain of evidence would have won him praise from everyone, right? Nope, not even close. Instead, it set Galileo on a direct collision course with the most powerful institution of his time, the Catholic Church.
So he decides to defend his ideas in a book, the Dialogue. But he makes a really fateful mistake. He writes it as a debate, and the character who argues for the old Earth-centered view is named Simplicio. Now, in Italian, that can basically mean simpleton. And his former friend, Pope Urban VIII, felt like Galileo was personally mocking him, and he was not happy about it.
The conflict just escalated so quickly. I mean, the church had already warned him years before to stop promoting the whole Copernican thing. So when he published his dialogue, they saw it as him openly defying a direct order. The final act was going to be his famous trial in Rome.
So the verdict comes down, and it's a fine distinction, but it's a really critical one. He wasn't found guilty of heresy, which could have meant a death sentence. Instead, the official charge was vehemently suspect of heresy, for believing and defending the idea that the Earth moves.
So to save himself from torture or worse, and remember, this guy's almost 70 years old, he's forced to get on his knees and publicly renounce, curse, and detest his own scientific truths. His sentence was changed to house arrest, and he would remain a prisoner in his own home for the last 9 years of his life.
But the story doesn't end there, not by a long shot. A powerful legend and, believe it or not, his most important work were still to come.
So this is where the legend comes in. The story goes that as Galileo rose from his knees after recanting, he muttered this one defiant phrase under his breath, talking about the Earth. So the big question is, did he actually say it? Well, probably not. The story doesn't even show up in writing for more than 100 years after he died. But honestly, whether it's fact or fiction, that phrase just perfectly captures the spirit of his work, right? That a truth, once you discover it, can't be silenced, no matter who tries.
And this right here, this is the most incredible act of defiance. He's imprisoned in his villa, his eyesight is failing until he goes completely blind, and what does he do? He writes his masterpiece. Two New Sciences was everything he learned in his life about motion and mechanics. It was smuggled out of Italy, published in Holland, and it became the very bedrock of modern physics. Just amazing.
So, when it's all said and done, what's the ultimate legacy of this man? A man who was condemned in his own time, but celebrated for centuries after. Well, the judgment of history has been pretty darn clear. Later scientific giants, people like Stephen Hawking, they looked back and pointed right to Galileo as the pivotal figure, the guy who really kicked off the scientific revolution. And then you have Albert Einstein, who just revered Galileo's work. He gave him the ultimate title, the father of modern science. For Einstein, Galileo's passionate fight against dogma and authority, that was the very spirit of science itself. Ultimately, Galileo's real victory wasn't just what he saw, but how he saw it. He championed a brand new method for science. Basically, don't just rely on what ancient authorities wrote down. Instead, observe, experiment, measure, and crucially, insist that the universe is written in the language of mathematics. You know, his story just resonates so much today. It leaves us with this provocative thought. The struggle between evidence and what we're told to believe, that didn't end in 1633. The spirit of Galileo lives on in every scientist, every thinker, and really in every one of us who dares to look at the world and ask a new question.